Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Louise. I hope you're all doing so good today. We are here to do my last wrap up of 2025. And this is a huge wrap up for me because I was not able to film much at the end of the year. So I have a ton of books. I think since we last did a wrap up, I have read 17 additional books. But some of them, I think 3 of them, I won't be talking about here because they are going to come out in future vlogs. So I'm not going to spoil them here. None of them are in my best books of the year. Otherwise, I would put them in here, but none of them are. So I will wait to talk about those later. So I think we just have 14 books to cover, which is still a lot of books to cover in this last wrap up, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna get through it. And I'm excited to get back into the swing of things because my next video will definitely be my best books of 2025. And I love filming that video. Who doesn't love filming that video? Who doesn't love watching those videos? I watch so many and it's so fun to get to hear about the books that people loved throughout the year and put some additional ones on my TBR. Without further ado, let's get into these 14 books in the order that I read them, but we will put all the books that have come out already in vlogs at the end, of which there are 7, I believe. 5 of them were not even in the thumbnail because they were all from the library. So let's go ahead and dive in. First book we have to get into is a library book, but it's not one that came out in any of the vlogs. But this was one of my 2025 anticipated releases, and that is Enjoy Your Stay at the Shamrock Motel by Andrew Kaufman. This short story collection is published by Coach House Books. And I really enjoyed this. This was one of those anticipated releases for me that I kept thinking about throughout the year. And I was like, I really want to get to it before the end of the year. So I snuck it in. And I'm really happy I did. It is bizarre. So I'll tell you that in advance. The premise I think is really intriguing. So it's all about the Shamrock Hotel, and each short story follows a person who is staying the night there, sometimes for a long period of time, sometimes for a very short period of time, and about their surrealist, fantastical experiences when they are there. You can only find the Shamrock Hotel if you really need it, and each room does a different thing. Like one will confront you with like your greatest fear, for example. And you're supposed to learn a lesson while you're there. A lot of them have to do with learning about themselves and how they are in relationships. One of the stories that I really enjoyed was about a woman who is trying to get rid of her sexual shame. And I don't want to ruin what happens, but so many of the stories have this like relational embodied component to it, and I really enjoyed it. But I think you need to be prepared for the very weird stuff to happen and be able to roll with that. But I really enjoyed it and thought it was a solid short story collection. I liked how all of the stories were linked through the hotel and kind of the premise of each of the rooms, but I was able to buy in. It worked for me. So that is Enjoy Your Stay at the Shamrock Motel. Next up, we have a nonfiction. I think we have a ton of nonfiction to go over. I ended up reading a lot in nonfiction November, which makes sense. And this first one was Hunger by Roxanne Gay. This is published by HarperCollins, and I loved this book. Easy 5-star for me. I picked this one up because one of my friends, Kat, got to pick 5 books off of my shelves this year that I had to read. I got to do the same for her last year. And so I had to follow through. If she let me do it, I had to let her do it. And this is one of the ones that she picked. And I'm so glad because this has sat on my shelves for God knows how long. And I absolutely loved it. This came out, let's see, in 2017. And I was amazed at how relevant this book still is. This book could have come out this year. And I do think this is probably Roxanne Gay's most famous work. It is a memoir about her experience being in a larger body, about her experience struggling with disordered eating, struggling with her self-esteem and imposter syndrome in her career. But it is all tying back to body size and disordered eating. I thought she did an amazing job at showing the contradictory nature of your thoughts when you are inundated with this like systemic diet culture that we are in the US, and with the like normalization of disordered eating and social currency that you get when you are thin or in a smaller body. She also talks about some ways that that intersects with her race, and everything in here I just felt like was unbelievably well thought out, while simultaneously feeling so relatable. It's the way that I wish I could talk about disordered eating to other people, and I just want to put this book in everyone's hands for that reason. This will absolutely be a book that I think I reread at different points in my life, and would highly encourage anyone to pick this one up. So that is Hunger by Roxanne Gay. And then we actually have two Calico books in a row. I'm going to grab them both out at the same time. And these are actually good for me to show together, because one is my least favorite Calico edition I've ever read, and one is my most favorite Calico edition I've ever read. Can you take a guess which is which? We will start with the one that I read first and my least favorite. This is Visible. The Calico series is done by Two Lines Press. It is an anthology series. They put out 2 a year. Typically one is poetry and one is short stories. Visible is the outlier in the series. You can also see it's an outlier in the size. They're normally always this size. This is the only one that is larger, and that is because Visible is a text and image anthology. And this entire anthology is about the relationship of how we see things, how we read things, how we learn things, epistemology, basically, in a number of different art forms, and how we consume them. Sounds like an amazing premise. This, I believe, has 8 works in it, all by 8 different people, different languages they're translated from, different translators. And this was such a struggle for me to get through. If it was not a part of a series that I want to be a completionist of, I would have DNF'd it. In some ways, I'm happy I forced myself to push through, because the last 3 pieces in this were really good. The first 5, though, I did not like. Some I actively, I don't want to say hated, but very much disliked. And because it's an anthology, and because the scope of this anthology is so vague and broad, I might just like take you through some of what these stories are trying to do. The first story is looking at images and talking about how language is really just images, and can you communicate a written story through image alone? How different is it to letters that become words, that become sentences, that become language as a whole? It was way too abstract for me, honestly, and I mean, like, who knows? Maybe too highbrow for me. I did not get it, and it didn't bring up any emotion for me. The ones that I enjoyed at the end were this collection of images and poetry about the image that you just saw. I really enjoyed that one. I thought it was phenomenal. I also really enjoyed this story, kind of like a history of a boarding house. It's called The Boarding House of Memory. It also contains images in it. And then the last one is similar to the boarding house one, where it is images with some prose connected to it. But this, I would say, reads much more like spoken word, and they're almost like mini reflections on what the piece of art evokes. It's not talking about what is specifically in the art itself, but what the piece of art evokes. And I really enjoyed that as well. So those ones I enjoyed, but least favorite, I'm not surprised that Two Lines didn't ever do this again in the Calico series. This is an older one, a backlisted one that I wanted to catch up to, so that is that. Next up, my favorite from the Calico series I have ever read was Hair on Fire. This is an anthology of Afghan women poets. So one of the poetry editions, this is the most recent one from 2025, and I loved this. The poetry ones have actually really been standouts to me, and I have thoroughly enjoyed, I think, all of them. And this one is no exception. Basically every poet in here I was interested in looking up more poetry from, which is a huge success, I think, in an anthology where in this one you have 5 different poets that you're getting work from. Sometimes you're getting a longer work from one of them, and sometimes you're getting multiple shorter works. This covers a wide range of stuff. There isn't a huge thematic component combining these, but it's really talking about women who have previously been silenced, what happens when you give them a voice finally. And here are their voices, and they are amazing. Definitely would recommend this if you enjoy poetry. It's so, so good. And with this poetry collection, they also sent me a matchbook that has this image on the matches, which is hilarious because it's called Hair on Fire. So love this one, would highly recommend. Easy 5-star poetry collection for me this year, of which there have only been a couple. Next up, we have another nonfiction book that I also loved. I loved it. And that is Hood Feminism by Nikki Kendall. The subtitle is Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot, and it's published by Viking, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. And this book is also a little bit older, but still felt so relevant. Let me look up the date so I can tell you. 2020. So relevant. And ooh, this book got me. She says at the very beginning, like, this is going to be an extremely direct, comprehensive, and well thought out critique of the feminist movement, particularly the feminist movement in the United States, why it is not intersectional enough, specifically why it is so white, giving examples of what it would look like to have more intersectional feminism that actually helps all women, particularly the women that are the most marginalized and need the most support, that need feminism and the feminist movement the most. And it is very unflinching. There are some things that at surface level, there were like, I think 2 things that came up here that were challenging for me. I had to wrestle with them, but I loved this. I, again, would encourage anyone to read this. And while it was hard to read on the one hand, it was optimistic on the other, because it did give a lot of examples of how, not just systemically, but on an individual level, we could do a better job of, particularly white women, of having more of an inclusive feminist movement. And I loved it for that. I read this as a buddy read with a friend as well, and she also loved it and gave it 5 stars. So smash it for both of us, and I was happy to get to chat with her about it a little bit. So that is Hood Feminism. Then we have another nonfiction that is How to Be a Victorian by Ruth Goodman. This is published by Liverlight, which is an imprint of Norton, I believe. And this book I had to read in multiple chunks throughout this year. It is very long. The font is very small. There are images throughout that you get to peek at. But this is, it says, a dawn to dusk guide to Victorian life. It's showing like the good, the bad, the ugly, the nitty gritty of what it was actually like to be a Victorian, because we often get a very romanticized version of what Victorian life was like, when really it was pretty horrific. There were lots of advances made in the Victorian era, but like starvation was very common. Dying from illness was extremely common, particularly illness caused by like a lack of sanitation. Child labor was horrible during this time. I mean, like so many horrific things. So this was actually a very brutal read. There were sections that were more lighthearted when I talked about like, what are people wearing? What are people eating? How do people bathe themselves? All those types of things are included as well, but so many horrific elements, which is sort of what I was looking for. I wanted it to be like a real minutia of a person's experience from dawn to dusk and everything they would have to go through. And she does do a good job of trying to talk about different class ranges. So she'll say like, this is what a person who is like living in extreme poverty would wear. This is what someone who's working class would wear. This is someone who is like upper middle class. This is what someone who is extremely wealthy would wear, and on and on and on. So I appreciate that she did that. My main issue with this is there are so many inserts of the author's own experience trying out a lot of these things. So like wearing the traditional garb for months at a time, bathing the way that they would bathe, plowing her field the way that they would plow a field. And it just got old that she kept, for me, just like reiterating points by saying like, and I did this too, and I thought the same thing. And that just like, it took up probably like 75 pages of this book. I did not need that to be there nor want it to be there. So that's the only reason why I rated this down a little bit. But for the information, I thought it was great. I just did not want the autobiographical elements of this. So that is How to Be a Victorian by Ruth Goodman. She does have other books that are like How to Be a Tudor. It follows different eras. Maybe I might pick those up, but left unclear at this point in time. All right, then we have, guess what? Another nonfiction. So this one, is this the last one? This might be the last nonfiction. This is a graphic nonfiction and it's called Fine by Rhea Ewing, a comic about gender. This is published by Liverlight as well, so the same as this, which is an imprint of Norton. And this is a compilation of interviews that the author did over like a span of almost like 10 years, I believe, asking a wide range of people on the spectrum of gender what their thoughts about gender are. And interspersed throughout that, we get the author themselves inserting how the interviews are impacting the way that they think about their own gender. And the thing that I really liked about this, which is different from this one, I liked the author inserting themselves here. It felt much more cohesive to what the book and the project was trying to do. Like it made sense for that to be in here. And the other thing I loved about this is we get interviews from the same people over different years. So they'll be like interviewed in 2012, and then we'll see an interview from 2015, an interview from 2018, that type of thing. And the author does the same thing for themselves. And I loved that like progression that we got to see over time, how their thoughts changed based on their lived experience, based on their experience of themselves, based on additional knowledge and additional jargon that comes out. And that was really interesting to get to see and to get to read. I also love that this is a graphic work because you get to see some of the like physical changes for people as they're being interviewed over the year. I'll just show you this for like art style purposes. There is a lot of text in this, so this is not necessarily going to be a graphic work that you just race through. I took my time with this. I think I read it probably over the span of almost a month and thoroughly enjoyed it. So thought this was great. Would definitely recommend people pick it up. So that is Fine. And then last thing I think didn't come out in a vlog, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes, this one didn't come out in a vlog, is Sabrina and Corina by Fajardo-Anstine. This is a short story collection published by One World, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. And this was one of the other books that my friend gave me to read for the year. So I was able to sneak this one in at the end. And I'm sad to say that while I know this is a beloved short story collection, for me, it just felt mid. I don't know if it's because I read it like well after the hype when people were really getting into this. Let me see when it was published. This was published in 2019. I think if I would have read it in 2019, I would have loved this. But I think my taste in short stories have changed since this. This is very like true to life, which if my short stories are going to be slice of life short stories, I really need them to be really packing a punch with either like meaning or emotional resonance, ideally both, because I feel like it doesn't have the like surrealist elements to add to the intrigue or excitement. So I feel like I really want to be like getting some emotional or thinky meat from it. And these ones just didn't quite give me that. The fun thing about this is it takes place in Colorado. I'm from Colorado, and so many of the references, I knew what she was talking about. But yeah, overall, I don't think this would be one that I recommend now. I know this is well beloved, so if you like these more like slice of life familial drama stories, which is what these are, then I would definitely recommend picking it up. But that just isn't really my jam at this point in time. So that is Sabrina and Corina. Okay, now let's try and quickly talk about all the books that came out in vlogs. First up, in my latest episode for my Now or Never series that has already come out on the channel, I read LaRose by Louise Erdrich. This is published by HarperCollins. And this book was fantastic. I get why so many people love Louise Erdrich. This is the first thing I ever read from her, and I will definitely be reading more. I have 2 other books on my shelves already, and I'm so happy that project pushed me to read this. This is an extremely large cast of characters that we're following, but they mainly center around 2 families, the Irons and the Ravages. And the father of the Irons family, one day out hunting, accidentally kills the young son of the Ravage family, who is named Dusty. And Landro, the one that kills him, decides with his wife that the right thing to do is to give the Ravage family their own son, who is the same age, he's 5 years old, who is named LaRose. And we follow the aftermath of that. And we get so many POVs. There are a ton of POVs in here, but I promise you, you will understand who everyone is. It is extremely easy to follow. And it is all about how this one instance has really broad sweeping collateral damage and impacts so many people in this community, not just in the families, but the whole community, and how it impacts them all differently. And this was just a masterclass in character work. I can't believe how well, like 30 different characters are written in here. They all feel like distinct people, and all of their voices felt like they added to the story. We also get 3 different timelines in this story as well, and I was able to follow that too. It's just like so impressive what she was able to do here. And if you love just highly character driven stories, then I would say this is absolutely a book that you should pick up. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So that was such a win for my Now or Never series. And then the other vlog that more recently came out on my channel was reading 2025 releases that I've heard rave reviews for. And in this vlog, I picked up 5 books, all from the library. So let me try and go over them in rapid fire. First one is A Language of Limbs by Dylin Hardcastle. This is a sliding doors novel. So you get 2 different like outcomes branching off of one inciting incident, which is our main character being caught by their parents with another young woman, and they're having sex. From there, we follow 2 different storylines, 2 different lives of our narrator. This book was so effective in what it was trying to do. I loved both storylines, and you switch back very frequently, which I think is really smart by the author, because you can never forget the other storyline. The book sort of like forces you to keep reckoning with these 2 different paths. And this is another book that had great characters. You really feel for them, and it is just a lovely queer story at the end of the day. Not just queer love, but queer friendship. And if you're looking for a book that is really like centering queerness, this is a great book to pick up. So would definitely recommend that one. Next up in that vlog, we have a nonfiction, which is One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar Akkad. A very well-read book this year, and I think for good reason. I thought this was extremely well done. It is part memoir, part reportage on the genocide in Gaza. And it is about the author's own experience being an immigrant and the author's experience of being a journalist and like currently living in the US, and how our political system is contributing to the genocide of Palestinians. And it's his like reckoning living in a country and benefiting from a country while also watching it commit atrocities from afar, like to people that we feel like are away from us or other. So it's his experience wrestling with that. And then there's also each section, kind of chapter sort of, starts with reporting from the genocide and then talks about a different atrocity, essentially, to kind of keep centering that experience. It's kind of hard to describe exactly what it's doing, but I thought it was really thought-provoking and really well written. I think this is particularly for people who are living in the US, because it does really talk about the US political system. So I think it is slightly niche in that way. And I said this in the vlog too, like this is not to replace reporting from an actual Palestinian. This has a lot of memoir elements from someone who's not Palestinian. So don't go to it for that purpose, if that makes sense. So that is One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This. Then we had Harriet Tubman live in concert by Bob the Drag Queen. This was such a surprise for me. I loved this book. It is a really short novel in which the premise, which you just need to accept up front, it doesn't explain it, is that people can choose to come back from the dead. And in this reality, Harriet Tubman has come back from the dead and she wants to make an album. So she reaches out to our main protagonist, who is a music producer that has sort of had a fall from grace that you learn about along the way. And not only is it about making the album together, but it is really about freedom. So Harriet Tubman is wanting to find a new modern way to get her message about freedom out into the masses, and thinks that an album is the way to do it. And you get them like writing the songs, you get snippets of the songs, you even get 2 full original songs performed at the end of the book by Bob the Drag Queen, which are great. But you also get Harriet Tubman interacting with our main protagonist and trying to educate him on what it means for him specifically to be free. And that intersects with why he's had a little bit of fall from grace from his career, which I don't want to spoil. I think that's like part of discovering along the way. But it was really concise. It was really sharp. It was so funny, so funny. I have really read some books that genuinely made me laugh this year, and that is very rare for me. This one definitely did that. And it is spectacularly performed in the audiobook version by Bob the Drag Queen. So I definitely recommend picking it up that way if you're gonna read it. And overall, just highly recommend. I'm so glad I snuck this one in, and I'm so grateful to all the people that put it on my radar this year, because it would not have been one that I had picked up on my own. So loved it. Next up, we had Stag Dance by Torrey Peters. This has also been, I mean, as all these books are, the premise of the videos, they've been talked about a lot. So this one is Torrey Peters' sophomore release. And it is 3 short stories and a novella that are all talking about gender in one way or another. And I thought this was really fantastic as well. One of the short story collections is like one of the best short stories I've read the entire year. It is about 2 young boys at a boarding school and their romance with one another. It's very messy, it's very heartfelt, it has like longing and intensity, and it was just so good. I absolutely adored that short story. I also loved the novella Stag Dance, which is about these loggers, lumberjacks. The audio performance of that is also amazing, would definitely recommend. And that one is about a stag dance in which the loggers can opt to put a piece of like triangular mesh over their crotch to indicate that they want to be a woman for the night. And then they are a woman for the night and are supposed to be treated as such. And our main character is really intrigued by this idea, and we kind of follow him leading up to the stag dance, after the stag dance, and it is very propulsive. It's very plotty. The one thing I'll say about this collection that for me didn't make it a favorite of the year is the first and last short story weren't perfect for me. I still think they're like overall well done, but I think some things needed shortening, but overall it's a great collection and would recommend that too. I would recommend every book in this video if you're not catching that. And then lastly, I read The Hounding by Xenobe Purvis. This was another book I heard so many good things about. I think part of why this book got such good buzz this year is the cover. Like, let's be real, that cover is amazing. This did exactly what it set out to do. It is comped with the Virgin Suicides, and we are following 5 sisters who are living in a small country town. It's a historical setting, but you don't know exactly when it's set. And there is a particularly vile man in the town who does not like the sisters because they are not the type of women that he expects them to be. Basically, they don't placate to him, and he does not like that. He believes that the girls are turning into dogs, and he starts to spread that throughout the town. And it's got this like a mass hysteria, tense vibe where you see this information spreading and poisoning the town, and you see how it impacts the townspeople very differently. You get a lot of different perspectives, and none of the perspectives are from the sisters themselves. I thought it was really effective, really good metaphor for the fear that men feel when women do not fit into a box that they think they should fit into. And I loved it. I loved it for that. So this one also gave 5 stars. Those are the books that I have finished out the year with. Please let me know if you have read any of these, and if so, what you thought about them. And please let me know what you read at the end of the year, particularly what you really loved, because I would love to hear that. I hope you all had a great 2025 of reading, and I will see you in my next video, which is going to be my best books of the year. So I will see you all then.